All right, welcome everybody back to another one of our recording sessions. I am really happy and grateful today to have a buddy of mine, Grant. He is the founder of Cause Artist, a fantastic media publication that covers kind of the best that exists out there in social enterprise world. We're lucky to have him. Grant, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, my brother. No, I appreciate it. It's always a welcomed opportunity.
For sure. You and I have done this a couple of different times now. You got to come and visit the actual classes. Now that we live in this like Zoom world, I'm thinking to myself like, man, I should have reached out to him way sooner just to talk, talk. I take so many different Zoom calls throughout the day, but it's really good to see you, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Same here, man. And I hope everything's going well on your end. And, what a way to learn, right? What a way to learn. And so, shout out to all the students because they're going through it right now.
Yeah, it is hard for sure. And we'll talk more about like COVID stuff in the industry here in a minute. But one of the things that I was trying to convey to students too is that they are the most appropriately equipped to pivot and adjust for this current situation than anybody. Like somebody who's, 25 years into their career or something like that, they don't want to do this. They don't want to like even humor the idea of it. But for them, they're so much more digitally native that they're like, yeah, it's uncomfortable. The social dynamics are kind of weird, but whatever, I'm fine. Yep. Oh, they could own this moment. They could own it. The
Definitely
whole idea
use it as opportunity.
Yeah, right. Remote work, being able to like compete with jobs that could be anywhere in the country now, and just showcase that you can work in this format. Oh, you'd be a really hireable person. So
yeah, for sure.
Anyway, we'll talk more industry stuff in here in a minute, but please tell me more about Cause Artist and how you founded it and what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I founded it 7 years ago now. Seems crazy, right? Been a crazy journey the past 7 years. It really just started out of a place of passion and just I thought a need in the market. There's just back then, so long ago, there really wasn't a lot of platforms kind of spotlighting founders that were creating companies and brands with sort of an impact model embedded, right? And you, of course, was one of them actually back then, one of sort of the originals that came out a while back. So it was really looking at kind of, I followed a lot of like sneaker blogs and things like that. And I was really like a sneakerhead. So I used to follow that. And I was like, it's really interesting how you could just kind of spotlight like new stuff coming out. But I was like, there's a lot of really interesting products and brands out here that are like actually doing stuff with their products after somebody purchases them, right? A real impact model within it and actually treating workers fairly and have much more of an ecosystem built around the company from day one, right? Rather than, making tons of money and then starting a foundation, right? As a company, it was embedded and ingrained in their DNA, which I really found was fascinating. And they found a way to be profitable doing it, right? To be able to give back and to be able to have that philanthropic angle with every product you bought. So, it really kind of came out of the vein of kind of turning like a sneaker blog kind of element into the same type of structure, digitally, but kind of dealing with like social issues and how business and product can solve them, right? So it really just came out of, a lack of that being in the market. I thought it was interesting and cool. So I just kind of started it.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, for all the years that you've been doing it and for as long as I've been following with you, you have told so many stories about so many different social enterprises. You would seem to have probably one of the largest repertoires of touch points with all of these awesome different brands that are putting a social impact model at the foundation of their entire company's existence. That said, with so many different touch points that you've had with a lot of awesome, really cool companies, what gets you excited about a particular social enterprise? Like when you come across one, because there's different varying degrees of impact sometimes. So like what gets you really excited about one?
Yeah, I think ones that, I mean, like I said, take a 360 approach and look at it from who's making that product, where it's made, how it's made. Also the packaging too. I think packaging is actually a big deal that a lot of people don't really think about. I'll give you one example is that I had an interview with a founder that's creating a sustainable and organic cosmetic line, right? And you think of beauty and skincare and, she was like, the one thing people don't think about is the waste in the industry. And she was like, if you look at our landfills, over 60% of the waste in our landfills comes from the beauty and cosmetic industry, right? So it was one thing that like, not being in the industry, right? Like not buying and like wearing makeup. Like I don't know that side of things. So I still learn so much when I interview these founders because they come from a different side of it, right? She worked at, like she came from Sephora and started as a Sephora, sustainability program there. And she came out of that and was like, everything needs to be disrupted in this industry, right? From like a sustainable standpoint. So I like what she did because she looked at everything from the organic side, the ingredients that they use in the skincare, from the plastic that's on like the lip balm stuff that you don't even think about, right? Like these things that can be repurposed. And then also she was like, the packaging needs to be, biodegradable or totally recyclable or be able to send back to us easily so we can repurpose. So I think looking at your industry and the issues that entire industry faces and trying to solve a bunch of them within like your one brand or one product you even make, right? So that really is the stuff that really gets me excited nowadays because, back then it was really coming out of the Tom's Revolution, the one for one stuff, right? And it was like, that was like the first sort of episode, so to speak. That was like episode 1, right? Or tier 1. And now we're seeing like impact models innovate, right? So now we're seeing companies really look at stuff and saying, let's add on to the one for one model, right? What more can we do from an aspect of it? Like let's hire certain workers or, make our products out of sustainable textiles, right? Not just use traditional cotton, but this hoodie's made out of recycled plastic water bottles, right? The technology is now available for brands to think differently of like how they make stuff, right? So that is huge too. The technology is catching up to where we could take waste out of the ocean and create fabric from it to where we can create new and different brands around, these sort of innovations. So that's what's really exciting right now.
That's cool. Yeah. The idea of the whole innovation practice within social enterprise is one of the big points that we try to stress in the class is that, yeah, you're right. Tom's was like chapter 1 in the whole situation. And it was like, well, they need a thing and we could sell a thing one for one. There you go.
Right.
Then you have some other people that come along that say like, oh, we give 10% to this or 5% to that or whatever. And
it's kind of like easy. Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. Yeah.
Versus having to create something new that is more impactful through an innovation process. That's what every company is doing anyway, or hopefully, but with a social enterprise, it's innovation for more social impact. So there's that much more credence in its value to the rest of society. It's not just a faster computer, although that is also a good thing, but it's actually hopefully going to make the world a better place. So to me, that's always been like, the high bar of a social enterprise is, did you create a thing that did not exist before that makes the world better?
Yeah, touching on the computer thing for a second, if you look at what's put in computers, right, and how those are mined, it's a very dark place. It's not very workers are not very treated very properly at all in these mining fields, whether it's in Africa or China or parts of Southeast Asia. Mining for this stuff is not a pretty business. It's often done by slave labor. Let's call it what it is. It's very detrimental to the environment. So Fairphone is another company. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they've really, really gone out of their way to say, hey, we're gonna make this practice of technology and like hardware like actually sustainable and ethical, right? You can do this. We can have fair trade digital products like we have fair trade coffee, right? Like we have fair trade clothing. So I think innovation in that space is really interesting too, because it's just one area we don't really think about. Like, oh, we get this amazing machine in our hands and it does like everything, it opens the world to us, but a lot of the stuff we get comes from a lot of people being exploited. So, and that's difficult to deal with sometimes. So I think more and more companies, giving people an option to buy differently is an amazing thing. And I think we need to reward that.
Yeah, for sure. And Fairphone is a great example. That's actually like the premier first example I always give for students.
It's one of the best companies in the world.
Yeah, just the innovation model for it and being able to have the interchangeable parts and whatnot. It's like the idea of brand and iPhone and whatnot, like it's a good phone, but it's not the only phone. It's not the only one that's out there. So, it's more about what works for you, whatnot. That said, you mentioned a couple of other different things, social issue wise. Are there any social issues that you think are not being as addressed as much as they could be through social enterprise? Because some areas get a lot more focus than others. Is there one that you've seen that's come across your company lately that you guys have had a chance to write about that you're like, oh, finally somebody is tackling this?
Yeah, I think that it's really tough to do. I'm really, really fond of a company called Career Karma, and
Mm-hmm.
the skilling of underprivileged sectors of our society, right? And I think it's become very amplified, like with COVID, right? Everybody works remotely, and everybody needs to develop these new skills. But at the base level of things, not everybody has a laptop. Not everybody can work from, right? So if you had a job and now you can't even develop the skills to work from home because you don't have this piece of equipment that allows you to for the world to open up, right? So I would say like the skills gap to me has been one that is very difficult. It's just challenging, right? I mean, it just is. But I think the skills gap for individuals to learn how to develop skills in this sort of modern world of learning how to use technology, right? I think it's been something that's always been left behind because we depend on the government to reskill people or retrain people, and it's just not what they do, right? It's not what they do really well. And so to see companies kind of come in and say, hey, if you sign up, we're gonna give you a laptop, to help you complete this course so you could learn JavaScript, right? And in 9 months, we'll put you in a job, a high-paying tech job, right? That's not available for people in Compton, right? Or inner city New Orleans or Baltimore. That was never a possibility to even know what a software engineer even was, right? How do you even get a job like that, right? So I think opening up job opportunities for people is an amazing opportunity to really invigorate these areas of our great cities that have been left behind, right? Because they just had nobody's been looking out for them. So Ruben Harris, the CEO of Career Karma, are doing an amazing work, doing an amazing job in creating a company where they're allowing students from every part of the city to get a laptop, to get these courses, train themselves, and then put them into job opportunities, high-paying tech jobs, right? I mean, it's really an amazing thing to think that you could be a 21-year-old and make $65,000 a year after 1 year of a coding boot camp. That changes legacy, that changes the cycle of poverty very quickly.
Right.
So that's something that is exciting to me, is the ability for these new founders to come out and create these paths through tech.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think it kind of speaks akin to this idea that poverty exists somewhere else. And a lot of times when I see other founders that are starting their social enterprise and they're like, this is a problem and I got to tackle it. For whatever reason, that problem is often somewhere far away. And I kind of have to, like, if I'm doing a mentor session, be like, yeah, but like, is there anything literally in your own backyard? Like, not even your own country or state, literally your own city. Do you just look around the block and be like, there's stuff right here that you can do because you're the most adequately empted for that situation to address it right there and then, versus like, oh, I'm going to swoop into Africa somewhere and take care of a problem that I kind of maybe don't understand the full grasp of. And that somebody's doing it in a really strategic way of identifying the skills gap and the skills / the awareness to get the skills, and then the equipment that's needed to advance those skills, because that is a huge conveyor for socioeconomic stratification.
And you can scale the impact, right? You can scale the impact because the ripple effects go through every city, right? Yep. So that to me is, you have the ability to scale impact very quickly is something that has been very difficult to do. It's just hard to do, right? I mean, it really just is.
But if it's done well with good messaging and good branding, I like to always think of it as like, I would love to see the like coding boot camps have the same type of success and virality of, say, like your Roden and Fields, multi-level marketing schemes that exist. Because instead 100%. Of all those people that I knew from high school that didn't leave town, and now they're trying to like hawk their wares on Facebook every day, I'd like to see them instead taking that dedication and time and putting it towards a boot camp coding academy that costs less money and would definitely get them out of that situation that they feel like that's their only way.
And here's the kicker is that they using another innovative thing, and there's still a long way to go with income shared agreements called ISAs, income shared agreements, where the individual, the student, doesn't have to pay anything up front, right? Those agreements work is that essentially it's free to get educated, to get a job. Once you get a job, you get then 10% of your earnings for the next 5 years back to the program, right? So it's a way where people can invest in human capital, essentially. And that person can make a decision on, hey, I'd rather spend, $12,000 on this, but I don't have to spend it right now. I can, over time, I could pay it back through my paycheck. But, it's a really amazing way for everybody to get high-end education without having to spend a ton of money, where a lot of people just can't do it, man. It's just not something that can happen. But to your example, I had a friend who did it. He had a biology degree, had a really high paying job, but he didn't like it. So this was a real passion thing, right? He was like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, So he quit his high paying job, went and drove for Uber for a year while going through the coding boot camp to learn database engineering. And in 12 months, he's got a job, not a job, a career now that he loves. And he's like, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life, right? So our thought processes change where, if we're stuck in something, there's no escape from it. This is just our life, and that's just not true anymore. And like, I always point to him as an example because it's a beautiful example. He was just like, and he had a kid too, a newborn kid, right? To go home to your wife and say, I quit my job today because I'm gonna go do this. You can't, that is a really courageous thing to do. And you got to succeed, right? You got to put that, then you have to put that work in. But if you are serious about doing it, you can change your life in a year now, right? So for a lot of people coming out of COVID, it's a good transition to talk about that. There's opportunities for people to reskill themselves, right? And to take a next leap in their life and their career. And you just couldn't do that before.
Well, I love that comes from, the founding of a social enterprise that's looking to try to modify or improve upon like our structured educational system to give more empowerment to populations that may not have had access to that traditional route for education. Believe me, we're obviously in it in the traditional sense. Sure. But that's not the only path. And sometimes it can't be for a lot of the rest of the world. And we have to make sure that we're stronger as a society, not just for the few that can get to it. You know what I mean? So, social enterprise, that's that middle road that really can help, connect those two or fill the gap a little bit.
And the one thing I also love about what he's doing is that there's no job. There's no job in the entire branding at all. It's all career, right? Mm-hmm. We always see our politicians talk about job creation. We created all these jobs. Yeah, but what type of jobs are they? We don't need more people working at McDonald's, right? And Wendy's. We need careers. We need to build careers. We need our politicians, our governments, our companies to create careers, not just jobs. Jobs come and go as we see, right? But careers is something very sustainable.
You'd mentioned COVID a second ago. You, again, be it that you have so many touch points with so many different companies that you're writing about on your site and on the platform for the publication. Have you caught wind or heard of any nuanced or different things that are happening now because of COVID and this like crazy wild time that we're living in?
Well, I think look, e-commerce brands across all sectors, right? Sustainable, ethical or not, I think are doing better and doing well, right? They're being discovered. People just have more time. They're maybe Googling keywords that they haven't before and finding out new things, right? So I think brands who have invested time are winning, so to speak, right? They're doing well. They're doing okay. Going back to, to the tech side of things and people who are usually left behind, right? Those are the people who usually suffer, the more in these type of issues, right? The World Bank released last week, for the first time in 20 years, extreme poverty is going to rise globally rather than decrease, right? Mm. So there are a lot of social enterprises that are succeeding because they invested it digitally, right? But the people, for half of the world who don't have the ability for that digital engagement, right, to help them in their future, they're just getting further and further left behind, right? And exacerbated by COVID, of course, also climate change. It was sort of movement of populations and immigrants and refugees. what climate change does. So you kind of have this unfortunate perfect storm for individuals who are already on the other side of the digital divide, right? Maybe even the regional divide as well. So I think that, COVID has really actually helped a lot of companies and social enterprises because technology is so good. They've invested in their e-commerce online. They invested in their messaging. People can find them when they search digitally, right? But COVID on the other level, it's detrimental to extreme global poverty. And also, again, in America, you see the unemployment numbers continue to go up, right? But they're going to keep going up because the unskilled labor force doesn't have anywhere to turn, or they don't know how to turn. They can't even go to Google and search, how to reskill myself or how to get quick jobs or whatever, right? Because they don't have that ability. So I think that, of course, anything happens, people who invest or companies and brands who invest for the long term have better times through this, right? Than people who and companies who just didn't, right? I mean, there's a lot of social enterprises that are physical in nature, right? If you're in the event business, like Buy Good, Feel Good, they had their big annual fair trade, consumer product show in LA, right? It was supposed to be actually in October or July and October, and it's completely canceled. So their business model is completely destroyed, right? Like overnight, very difficult, right? But they pivoted a little bit to marketplace, to create a marketplace for their social impact brands that were going to have booths at their shows. But I mean, you don't get the same amount of people paying for tickets walking into, a social impact event, right? To have people explore and educate themselves on these products and these founders and these artisans. So I think physical social enterprises, of course, are losing out, especially, people who have, restaurants, who employ people, coming out of rehab, right? Or coming out of a prison system. They had the opportunities to have jobs at, local restaurants, and that has been depleted. Target is not giving people those jobs. Walmart's not, right? Like, so that's the thing, is that these social enterprises usually, extend their hand and see innovative approaches and believe in people. They don't just look at a resume, they look at a person. So those opportunities are now going away, for those individuals. So, there's a lot of different elements that happen, unfortunately, when things like this occur.
So it seems like the digitally native brands that already are leaning into that e-com space, that they are kind of having, for lack of better words, an opportunity within this current situation. But it is also obviously exacerbating a lot of other issues that, in one form or another, an opportunity for a social enterprise to get in there and help solve that issue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that said, as new social enterprises emerge and as people seek out these career options, is there anything that you think a student should keep in mind as they go out into this industry under the current situation that is obviously something that we're going to have to work through?
The number one, there's two things. One, we can't really do really well right now, and that's travel. I think travel always will spark and inspire something in you, no matter where you go. Like you said, it doesn't have to be globally. It could be, go to a different city in your own state, right? Or go to a different state. Travel, you will always learn something. It is the greatest education tool ever. You can never not learn something by traveling. So I would always recommend that. And that will instill so much in you, creativity. It'll spark something in you if you're trying to find a direction or trying to create a business, right? Like, travel will spark things within you for sure. And then the other thing is that something we talked about all the time, always keep developing skills, right? We have an opportunity to be much more skilled human beings than ever before. You can create your own business, by learning the skills yourself to do it, right? So I think always be learning, always be developing skills to where when things like this happen, or other things, right? Whatever it may be, you're equipped yourself with skills in the marketplace that will enable you to survive, right? To be a chameleon, to live in every room, right? If you're in the marketing department, you can listen to understand what they're talking about. If you're in the web department or the digital department, like, you understand what they're saying and you can help them out. You can learn everything you can, because you never know what skill will be used in any area that you go off into, right? But being skilled, there'll always be opportunity for you.
That's great. Yeah, always being a lifetime student. Just
Lifetime
keep
student.
learning always.
Yep.
I know I'm trying to do more reading, trying to even get into coding like that, where I've seen some of those coding classes and been like, yeah, that'd be cool to learn. So good. That's great advice. Thank you again so much. Truly having time with you to be able to share with our students really, really means a lot. So I want to be respectful of your time, and we can say goodbye for now. But if it's okay, would it be all right if any of the students reach out to you, maybe to connect or just say hi?
Of course, Grant at causartist.com. Easy peasy.
Fantastic, man. Well, thank you again for your time. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And yeah, just hang in there, COVID style.